Welcome to the Goodwood Show.
Welcome everyone to another The Goodwood Show. And today we have a guest that, to be honest, I would never expect to have. And I think this is going to be a great conversation. Welcome, Lollipop. Welcome.
No, I appreciate you having me on. Always like to answer questions.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So let's crack on. What was your past experience before crypto? What is your background and why crypto?
So I'm actually a pharmacist. So I've got a PharmD. I work in pharma, but what I realized is once I got out of pharmacy school that I had a massive amount of debt. It ended up getting close at one point to over 300,000. I needed a way to pay that off. And I was just looking at opportunities and just different things that were around, and it was actually about 2013, the end of 2013, that I started looking a bit more into Bitcoin. It had just actually had crashed from I think the highs were just over 1,000 or just under 2,000, I forget. But it had just crashed like 50%. And I heard a family member talk about it, and I had heard about Bitcoin a number of times before. I actually remember my brother bringing it up in like 2009, 2010, and it was just something that we made fun of and joked about, kind of eating those words now. But I had decided to give it another look. And I got actually when I started figuring out what the underlying technology was and what it was trying to do, I got a bit more interested. And then I started seeing a bunch of different altcoins that literally did nothing. This was pre even Ethereum. There was no such thing as smart contracts or anything. You had Bitcoin, Litecoin, and then you had a bunch of other copies kind of off of that. That really just changed the token amounts, how they were distributed and whatnot, but it was really primitive back then. But I really liked the underlying change that it did. I mean, really what it came down to is whenever you handled any financial transactions, they had to go through these massive systems through Swift and everything. And once I started learning how it actually happened, I always thought, in my bank account, I put a check in or cash in. I see it on my account as the balance has increased. My assumption is that money was just directly moved there and it's sitting there, not realizing the number of hands it actually has to go through, the number of settlement layers to actually go into your account. They're really just putting it in your account as a IOU, knowing that it's most likely going to show up in 2-3 days, and they want to make sure you have a good customer experience, so they want to make sure you get access to your money quick. To have that change, I thought, and actually be able to make those transactions without that third party, without those 3 days or whatever it took to actually settle, I thought was really interesting. And I could see the value in it. I just didn't know where it could really kind of go from there. But, I had heard a lot about people making money off Bitcoin. I had a lot of debt. I saw something that looked interesting. So I just decided to start digging more into it. I started doing some trading with just very low amounts and just kind of went along with it for a number of years. It wasn't actually until, so the biggest issue that I had was when Ethereum started, there started actually being systems in place or protocols in place that you could actually use for DeFi. I remember going from Bitcoin, which at that time transactions would take several hours. But Ethereum was slightly faster, but I remember EtherDelta, if anyone was around back then. But it was the first decentralized exchange where you could deposit Ethereum, you can then purchase off the order books and then transfer the funds out. But what it would take is a good hour or so to get money in, another hour to actually get your transactions, your exchange done, and then another hour to get out. It was taking 2, 3, 4 hours just to complete one transaction. It was a pain, but it was the best that was there. And all of a sudden, it was a few years later that I had a friend recommend Solana when Solana was still just brand new. He had me download a wallet. I sent one transaction, and by the time I switched from my wallet to the Explorer, I noticed it was instantly already confirmed and there. And I was just
Yeah.
kind of blown away that that transaction, after going for years with such slow transactions, something actually worked efficiently.
Yeah,
And
and
kind of
fast.
since then, yeah, and since then I had been a Solana maxi. Yeah, really ever since then. That was probably what, 2020, 2021, I
2020. Yeah,
forget.
yeah, yeah. And then, but did you actually use Ethereum? Like, did you buy NFTs on Ethereum before Solana, or did you
NFTs.
cash?
So that's the thing, is I moved over to Solana before NFTs really started becoming
Okay.
popular. And it was, I had heard, I know about NFTs and that, but it wasn't until actually the first SMB Gen 2 mint that I
Okay.
actually I decided to try a mint and see what NFTs were kind of all about. I think they had already been going on Ethereum at that time, but I hadn't paid too much attention to it. But once I started doing the SMB and I started noticing more, it was less about the NFTs and was more about what I started seeing in social channels related
Mm-hmm.
around. I started
Yeah.
because I was in the channel when because the before MonkeyDAO started, it was a channel that people were trading SMBs just post mint. I had minted a Space Warrior here SMB Gen 2 that I ended up selling to someone for, I think it was like 10 grand in Solana at the time. And I was like, holy shit. And what I ended up finding out about 6 months, a year later, is the person I ended up selling it to was SolBigBrain before he even
No
went by
way.
that name. Yeah. So what's funny is he has my original minted SMB, and it was a Space Warrior here. So I mean, it was a super rare one that I knew once he had it, he locked it away in a vault. I was never getting it back. But that's when I decided I started looking around I still stayed in the channels with the trades. And just started seeing kind of the social pieces developing. I started seeing the original Monkey DAO guys starting to pull together a channel and realizing they wanted to kind of build something more off of it. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. And then I was just kind of, for that, in a month or two, just kind of lurking around and just seeing what was going on.
And it's funny because actually one of the questions I had, and it's a bit related with this, is that like SMB, like the Gen 2, kind of changed the lives of a lot of people. Like they started as no one, right? Like completely unknowns on Twitter,
Yep.
and some of them now are like massive influencers, became like SolBigBrain. Of course, he has the capital and stuff, but some others like I don't even think they have the capital, or they are whales
Yeah.
per se. They just, I don't know, they got so much following, and they are like now people that everyone follows.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on that? Like the creation of influencers, like from nothing, right?
Well, yeah, so like SolBigBrain, he already was in the VC round or the early rounds of Solana, and that's actually one of the big reasons why he was able to throw around so much weight in the space very early on, and why he threw so much Solana at me for that SMB that I had, was because he was purchasing Solana. I think it was like 25 cents a
Yeah.
piece or something like that, or 25 to 58. Don't quote me exactly, but it was something that was rather cheap. And so by that time, Solana was much more expensive. I think it was probably over $10 or so. So he was playing with a lot of house money to begin with to throw around. But like you said, a lot of the guys that didn't come from like a VC background or that, I would say guys like Nam, Jemmy, I think even Solana Legend, and a few others that were really the ones that kind of started pulling together Monkey DAO, and that what I think it finally did is it gave people a shared identity and shared incentives. You got people together going, we're seeing what's happening on Ethereum with NFTs. People are able to increase the value. by getting that type of recognition and getting people interested in the collections. We have a group of people that are already trading SMBs and already have a interest in it. What if we pull people together and try to just align those incentives, just try to work together to figure out how we can add value to this collection? I mean, inherently, everything I believe personally, it comes from a selfish place where you're trying to advance yourself in some way, shape, or form, either financially, socially, by prestige. You have some underlying mechanism, even if you're acting altruistically, even if you're dedicating your time to volunteering in that, you're doing it out of a value you have of helping others. That's the type of person you want to be. It's still coming from a place that is for your own personal advancement, but it's not it's not bad to be selfish and do things that advance yourself. It's selfish when you do that at the expense of others. But if you're able to align incentives so that everyone grows together, everyone benefits, that when you put in time, effort to also benefit yourself, you've got that aligned incentive model and everyone kind of wins. It's not really selfish at all. I mean, it's one thing I really recognized in the space with social interactions between people is the difference between manipulation and working together with people is where's your goal in mind? Is it just for yourself at the expense of others, or are you trying to benefit the whole? Because what I realized, the actions that you tend to take are the same, but it's just a question of what your motivations are and whether it's viewed as manipulation or if it's viewed as kind of collaboration.
Yeah, so this kind of is the premise for DAOs, right? Is what more or less you are describing. That work together, unified in a group, like together we are strong, kind of that.
Well, because we've known throughout history that people do better when they collaborate. We're able to do more when we have people with different experiences, different specialties, when we're able to come together and figure out what everyone's able to contribute and how we can leverage those things together, then we're able to do something more than we can on our own. And we've seen this in other areas. I mean, the concept of a business is purely based off the fact that, I can run something myself, but I can't be at a shop 24/7. I can't handle every single activity that needs to be done to be able to grow a business. I need other people. I need to collaborate with others. And so we formed collaborative structures that really protected the business, because a business needs capital to grow. You need people that you can trust and that are helping you grow that business. But ultimately, you're limited because most businesses and most things took place in the physical world before the internet, a lot of it even before phones. The ability to collaborate was a lot more difficult. And so you had a limited number of people you can work with. And you didn't always trust those people to the same extent that you may trust close family or that. And so we built legal systems that allowed people to collaborate and protect what assets were really held by businesses. That's why I always call a business a legal entity, because that's really what it comes down to. Is it's a legal structure to protect that governance model, that structure, and that ownership. But what DAOs did is they created a new way for people to collaborate where you didn't need those structures that have a lot more friction. We finally had a way that we could interact between people digitally, but also the big difference, we've been able to do that for a while. The difference is we were able to now have a shared treasury or shared assets that have a common identity, that when we grow the value of, say, an NFT collection, then all of us are gaining value from that. So we've been able to collaborate as groups just digitally. We just weren't able to really harness the value capture there, or be able to use or deploy capital like we were able to now with DAOs, with multi-sig wallets. And that, I think, just gave people a reason to trust others, work together with others. I think that's really what grew what we saw Monkey DAO become, and kind of everything after that.
Yeah, because before you had to trust someone to keep that money, right? Even if you put money from 10 people, but now you have the tools, let's say, to put that money, let's quote, safely, right, on a multi-sig or something that is not controlled by anyone, or is controlled in a way that is agreed before, and it's harder to act, let's say, right?
Yes, and actually, I think we needed that that core piece to start. But what I also realized, and this kind of is what you'll see a little bit more with the Bandito DAO, is that as we started doing that, we realized that we didn't even necessarily need multi-sigs to be able to trust others with capital to perform certain actions or activities that previously we would always be hesitant to trust someone online, because someone online, they may ghost they may ghost you and run off with whatever it is that you have. But what you saw is the same thing that we were just talking about with the people starting Monkey DAO. People started developing reputations. They started developing their own brands, they were able to start gaining followings. And that had value. People that were starting to build those followings, they wanted to continue to build that. They wanted to really be able to continue to grow who they were and attract more people to kind of work together with them. So what we ended up seeing is that there was something even beyond multi-sigs or using a protocol that's going to keep people honest. Because when you spend a year, 2 years, 3 years building up a reputation, building up an image, building up a following, one bad decision can ruin it all. And people don't want that. They want to protect what they've built, especially when it's tied to their identity and who they've kind of presented themselves as for such a long period of time. And that's really where I started getting more interested in the social elements of it, is because I realized we've got all these tools that we feel like we need. We need to use multi-sigs. We need to use governance, proposal systems and all that. But I started questioning, do we? This is a lot of work. There's a lot of effort to, I mean, even on-chain governance, getting people to vote is a pain in the ass to do. So how can we use other mechanisms in the space that are unique to the space to minimize that friction? And that really is what I saw with Bandito DAO and really wanted to learn and foster, is how can we build reputation and trust amongst people to minimize the amount that we actually have to use these tools? And can we collaborate even more effectively through doing that?
So Bandito is kind of a governance experiment, or was kind of structured to be something much more than that.
Well, and that's the thing, is I never started Bandito DAO. It was started a month or so prior to me joining. It was actually in those channels that I saw people trading the SMBs with a Sombrero. I saw Miltz and Panchito, who were the two people who started Bandito DAO. And I saw what they were just going around Twitter, raiding people or just kind of fucking around as bandits. They had the Sombrero as the icon. They were talking about Bandito DAO. There was already, I think, a good probably 15, 20 members. I looked at it and I went, this is a good brand. This is something that's engaging. It's fun. I can see value in this. I can see trying to grow this and doing the same that people did with SMB and Monkey DAO, where if we can work together and grow this kind of this identity, this group, then all of our SMBs are going to be worth more. There's going to be higher demand to join, and it's a lot more scarce than the SMB collection. At the time, there was, I think, only 99 Sombrero SMBs. Yeah, so that made it even more scarce, which means it was even more limited to join. So if it should be much easier to grow that identity in that group, and that's where we ended up seeing that pretty much ever since then. The Sombrero SMBs have always had a much higher floor than any of the other SMBs, any of the other floors, I would say. And it wasn't based on rarity. Almost everything else, the value of it came into the rarity in the collection. Bandito's kind of stepped out of that. Yes, you can still be part of Monkey DAO, but you can also be part of Bandito DAO. And if that's what you were interested in, most people, when they would buy a SMB with a sombrero, they were doing it to join Bandito DAO in addition to Monkey DAO. And so we saw that there was just that additional value proposition that was there just by growing that brand separately.
But how then you became so prominent in Bandito DAO? Because a lot of the people, if you ask about Bandito DAO to anyone on Solana, they will say your name, right? So what happened? What did change? Did you? I don't know. I'll let you say.
No, yeah. So actually, what happened when I joined? One thing I've done a lot in my career is I have worked on governance. I've specifically worked a lot with integrations and mergers of organizations. And what I realized is there is a lot of you need to have proper governance in place for those large scale projects to work, because there's a lot of complicated situations that happen when you try to merge two companies when neither's leadership really understands how the other organization or function actually operates. And so you end up having a lot of conflicts that if you don't have good means to communicate those things upward and make sure that they understand these difficulties or complexities, that you're always going to have a much harder time in getting those integrations done. So when I joined Bandito DAO, I just saw a group that was working together. I knew governance had been something people had been toying with. I just started telling people, hey, I'm going to start drafting some documents outlining what I see this group being or becoming. And I started pulling things together. And we still, the website is still up, BanditoDAO, I think, .com. That has those original governance documents back from really the start of it. What I'll say is very early on, I realized that what I put in there was a lot more technical than we needed. It was a lot more structured, and it was way overkill for what we were trying to do. But what it did is it gave everyone kind of a North Star and a vision that this is what I want our group to work towards. This is what I see our group becoming. And it gave a lot of options of how do we expand? How do we want to start including other, once we get our kind of group grown and stable, do we want to start including other collections that have sombreros in it and start like almost creating a coalition of different communities operating together under the Bandito brand? So there was a lot of other things that we could try out. But it was really a blank slate for us to just try something new and see what works, what doesn't. The only way for that to happen, though, is for someone to just put that vision out there and be loud about it. I mean, at the end of the day, the loudest voice is the one that's usually getting heard. So that's why you'll hear about, I have never claimed to lead the Bandito DAO. I'm not a founder. I'm just a guy that came in and I saw a way that I think we could have changed the governance model and grow the group. And I just happen to be the loudest. And I think that's the only reason why my name comes up a lot more often is just I tried to set a very distinct image. I tried to be confrontational. I tried to challenge most views that people had. I mean, the biggest thing I keep always going back to is I think the concept of a business is the opposite of what we should be trying to establish in a Web3 environment, because like I said early on, it's a legal structure, it's a legal system. Legal systems require jurisdiction. Fundamentally, jurisdiction is what all legal systems are based on. And when you move into the digital space, jurisdiction becomes so gray because it's usually based on where you're located. Well, when you have a DAO with a multi-sig wallet that has people spread out across the entire globe, I mean, who really has jurisdiction there? And so building a business where you have fundamental protections that have to be provided by the legal system just didn't make sense to me. Likewise, the whole concept of IP was really big at the time, and of intellectual property and intellectual property rights, that I know SMB or Monkey DAO at the time was trying to get their IP rights. And I thought that was a horrible idea, because Banditos showed very clearly that we didn't need IP to own our brand.
Exactly.
We just needed the community to look at us and go, they are the originals. And we didn't need technical or consensus through the blockchain. We needed social consensus. If the broader group, this broader Solana crypto Twitter, Discord groups, other communities, if they saw the sombrero and thought Bandito DAO instead of Monkey DAO, then we were successful in taking our IP without asking. We didn't need a legal system to enforce it. And ultimately, let's say Monkey DAO, when they did get the IP rights, they could have tried to stop us from doing what we were going to do. But I knew they weren't going to do that. One, because I had good relationships with most of the leadership there, and I wasn't trying to take away from what they were doing. I was trying to do something different. But also,
was still SMB, right? In the end of the day, right?
Well, it's still SMB, but they had the IP rights, and if they wanted to come after us for not operating within the scope of Monkey DAO or in line with whatever they wanted to do with the IP, they could. But how would the broader community respond if they started coming after us? It wasn't gonna be a good image. The reputation that they had, I just thought was gonna get harmed by doing that. So I was never worried about IP rights or anything like that. I thought it was quite honestly a waste of time, because again, it needed a legal system to enforce. And if someone tried to come sue us, then I think it was going to harm them more than it was going to harm us.
Exactly. Do you think actually that, like you said, Bandito was just before you joined, was just a group of people that would go to Twitter and write and post stuff and be loud, and then suddenly you come, the grown up, with kind of complex methodologies and governance. Kind of, do you feel that you I don't know, I don't want to say you killed the fun, but I don't know, it's another perspective that I wanted to run through you.
Well, the last thing I'd say is that I was the adult coming into the room, because I think I was the exact opposite. But I wanted to just start kind of fresh and see what we can do and not be constrained by what we thought we should do. All I knew is this was fun. I liked the people that were in there. I thought everyone was there for the same reason. It was just to have a good time and fuck around. So who doesn't want to be part of that? So how do we grow and get more people to want to join that and become part of that? So it really came from that mindset. And I knew very well that all the stuff I was pulling together was just a idea. And I knew I was most likely wrong, but regardless of if I was right or wrong in that, the goal wasn't to be right, because none of us are ever going to be right in this space, because exactly. none of us have any fucking clue what we're doing. At least we're willing to admit it. Most people think they have an idea, and you can see how the space is going with exploits and everything else that's going on. Yeah. We knew we had no idea what we're doing, but what do we know people like? They like having fun. They like fucking around. They like making money together. They like coordinating with like-minded people. So how do we foster that and just grow that?
Yeah, exactly. So at the time you didn't have like realms, or I don't know if squads was available at the time. So did you have any actual tools to do that? Was very archaic?
It was all just done in Discord through, we just used basic templates that we developed for proposals and things like that. But I also realized when we started doing proposals that the entire concept of the proposal systems, like people thought they were, was really flawed. Because when we would put proposals together, and usually you think, okay, you need 50% alignment on a decision and you move forward with that. But if you have 50% of people liking something or 51% of people liking something and 49% of people in the group not liking that, are you really wanting to move forward with something that you're alienating 49% of the people in your group? Especially when it was a small group like Banditos. I really didn't think that was a good idea. And then I was thinking, okay, what about the logic with super majorities where you need 66% or 70%? I'm like, you're still alienating 30% of your
Yeah.
people. And I'm like, okay, what if you have an idea and you even have just one person in your group, but that person is someone who is active, who contributes a ton, and they are really not feeling good about a decision or idea. Do I really want to move forward with that? Is that really a good idea in the long run, or is it better just to do things that everyone is more aligned with and not try to alienate it when you know that there are people that are contributing and helping? And so what I realized is the proposal system really shouldn't matter that much. Rather, it was more about how do we get people that have the same aligned ideas, views on the space, risk tolerance, so that we don't even need proposal systems. And that's where I started pushing a lot more when it came to social norms, culture, identity, because what I realized is if I can get like-minded people in, then the chances of a proposal being anything other than unanimous is almost non-existent because it's small enough, because we're a group that has similar ideas. We were ones that were willing to not be professional, willing to just fuck around, willing to take risks. And then that's when you actually started seeing me become a lot more controversial. I started attacking a lot of people because what I realized is that being very opinionated and having and attacking those that you disagree with actually filtered out people. People didn't want to associate with me if they thought I was an asshole that was doing things for bad reasons. And I didn't want them to join Bandito DAO. So by having very strong personality, the only people willing to join or stay were those that kind of fell in line with a similar viewpoint. And then we started seeing some people cycling out. Some people weren't a big fan of it. They ended up leaving. We started seeing people join because they thought it was fun to fuck around like that. And I
It's like a
realized
recruitment process. It's like a undercover recruitment, right?
it's a filtering system, basically. Is how
Filtering
I
system,
thought.
more or less.
How do I filter out the people I don't want in this group, and how do I maintain the people that we do? You can't do that at the scale of Monkey DAO. Monkey DAO needs, I mean, they need so many people in there, and so many people leave and join every day. I don't know how it is now, but at least back in the day, it was a revolving door. And it's like, okay, how do I want a revolving door when it's people that are not helping, when they're making things more difficult to move forward, but I want to keep the people that are all aligned. And just being that strong personality and image, and ended up being the biggest factor in actually achieving that.
So at the time, I think you guys, Bandito, were one of the first, let's say, NFT collections to have like a validator, right? Was not very common. Now it's a bit more common. How that came about, and if you want to guide me.
Yeah, so actually that's a very interesting story, and I love getting into it because ultimately one of the big issues I've seen, and this is, I think, goes back to the idea of a business or treating DAOs like businesses, is I was seeing in Monkey DAO, people had ideas on projects to do, and what they would do is they would set up a proposal on, we want to do this. It was never an assessment of, do we have the people in house to do it? Do we have people interested to do it? It was, we have this idea that we want to achieve. Can we get funding for it, or could we get it approved and get Monkey DAO to kind of lead that? And every time that happened, it failed because you just simply couldn't get people to be motivated, to stay motivated with. They didn't. It just wasn't an efficient way to do things, and so I wanted to avoid that. So first off, what I realized is Monkey DAO was way too ambitious. They had so many different ideas. Ambition killed so many things because you weren't able to foster that true social element. You were more focused you had people that were more focused on achieving certain numbers or metrics, and if those numbers or metrics didn't get met, then you had people attacking others. It created conflict in the group. It caused then the social cohesion to break down. So I kind of thought, let's not do that. Instead, what I wanted to do was let's foster the social element, the culture, the group, and then if something comes up that sounds like it would make sense to do, then let's do it. But let's not try to be ambitious and set something up on our own and then try to get people to fall behind it, because we can't get people to fall behind it. If you have to motivate someone to do something, the moment you stop motivating them, they're going to start doing it.
Yeah.
So so you can't have a idea that's coming from the DAO and push down to the group, because then it's just trying to motivate people and you're never going to maintain that, especially in this space. However, with the validator, what ended up happening is the group did want to do something. We wanted to figure out what is it that we can do for the space, do for a group. And a validator was always a idea we had, because maintaining a validator, it's work, but it's not too bad. It's something that it's not a high risk, because of validators, as long as Solana is running, you're going to need validators.
Exactly.
It wasn't like starting a project for making your own protocol that maybe it will get user adoption, maybe it won't. It was a very simple and straightforward model that should be able to sustain itself. We had our member Henko had been running his own validator for a while, but this was as Sol had dropped. I think we had gone from 150 and we were down to probably around $10 at this time. Henko was struggling to maintain the costs for the validator alone. And so instead of us deciding, oh, we want to set up a validator and then getting someone to do it, all we did was we went to Henko and went, you're running your validator, you need help. We've got people that want to support. We can fund, I think, all of the hardware and the initial costs. We can maintain those costs as long as you're willing to keep going with the operations of it. He wanted to keep going with the operations of it and keep it going. So then we ended up pulling a group of people together that all contributed about 500 SOL. And so 500 SOL at $10 was
not that much.
not that much at all. And so at that time, we got a group of, I think it was probably close to 8 to 10 people. I forget exactly. So that we had enough self-stake that we could be profit, at least break even and keep the lights on. And then anything over that, we were able to distribute to the people that put the money in, who had the SOL in there, and then also pay Henko for his for the work that he was doing on behalf of the DAO. But what I had also realized is there was a lot of other opportunities to support that validator outside of just our group running it. And this is where I started. I've always been big on governance, but this is where I started seeing actual utility and valuing governance. Because we had the validator, if I could get SOL to be directed to that validator, we could increase the revenue and increase what the Bandito DAO was getting. And so I started looking at protocols like Marinade at the time. And I started working in Marinade, trying to acquire more of their governance token, because I was able to then use gauges to direct SOL to our validator. But what I also realized with Marinade was it was a established group that had several businesses that were already involved in it that had their own interests in mind. And that was my first sense in really seeing that when you have businesses involved in your tokenized governance model, they don't give a flying fuck about anyone but their business.
Of course.
It's not healthy. It's not good for the community as a whole, because all they want to do is extract much value. They see it as a tool for them to use, which I get, but I wasn't a fan of that. And so that's actually when you started seeing some of my early escapades in governance, where I started making proposals specifically to attack people. The one I remember is there was a representative, I think from Solend, and I was not a fan of how his company was trying to use Marinade. And so I started making proposals to use the Marinade treasury to hire him gay prostitutes. Just for shits and giggles, because I knew it would get under his skin to have his name directly linked into a proposal that would be sitting on the protocol for all of time. alongside gay prostitutes, especially if I could get that approved. And then it called into question, okay, let's say I could get that approved. If I was able to get enough governance weight to get that approved, who's going to follow through with that?
Exactly.
Isn't that
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
poke
yeah, yeah.
holes in the exact? I mean, that's just going to show you the flaws in these governance systems. I started using governance. I started pushing vote after vote after vote for the same exact reason, because I realized these governance systems are really exploitable through social means. If I can get someone to dump their governance tokens and leave, that's better than convincing others to vote with me. I can get the opposition just to completely give up and leave. It's just not worth their effort and time. So that's when you also started seeing me attack people more specifically, because the whole goal was, can I get them frustrated enough to just say, fuck this, and move on to something else? Same thing
Yeah,
as
it's like,
with trying to get people into the DAO, the Bandito DAO, it's getting other people out of the DAO. And that's when I realized any on-chain activity can be influenced through off-chain actions, mainly social actions. And how can I leverage and use that? And so that's when you started seeing a lot of those, when I started fucking around a lot more with governance. And it was highly entertaining. I must say that was it was a lot of fun. But anyway, with the
you
validator.
Yeah, you kind of actually destroyed the concept that you wanted to implement, right? You love governance and communities, but then at the same time you were always putting it under pressure to test it at maximum, right?
But that's the thing, is if I'm able to break it, I'm one person. If I'm able to break it, then it's not a good model to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah.
So so if I cared about these things, it was in the best interest, quite honestly, of everyone involved for me to try to break it through any means necessary, because if it fails, then either it's going to get rebuilt stronger to avoid those exploits, or others are going to learn from that experience and hopefully put things into place to protect them. And that's why you saw me really fucking around with protocols, but you didn't see the teams. They wouldn't interact with me very much, but you also didn't see them condemning me or trying to stop me from doing it. They, I think, recognized, one, it was a decentralized, they were trying to be a decentralized system, which means I should be allowed to do what I want.
Exactly.
As well, I always had conversations with the teams when I was doing things like that to let them know if I'm going too overboard, let me know. My goal is not to tank their project. My goal is to take pieces, specifically the governance, pressure test them to as hard as I can. And in the long run, that should benefit them. And I think the people that understood that tended to be okay with what I was doing. They may not have liked specific actions, or because they might not have expected, or they think it might have been too far, but they understand at least where I was coming from. And anytime I tried to exploit a governance system, I was always very clear that I might try to do something, but if I'm successful, I'm not actually going to like steal the treasury or things like that. That's not my intention at all. And that actually ended up happening with the Solian DAO. It was a DAO that had several million in their treasury, but they didn't get the social element right. And so they had people that were just leaving in droves. It got very low activity. And so I saw a governance opportunity to just get overweight governance. And I created a proposal that I wanted to rename the DAO from Solian DAO to Lieutenant Lollipop Presents the Solian DAO. I got 49% of 48 or 49% of the votes. I could have pushed it over the ledge, but that was enough for me to kind of prove my point. Exactly. Again, I'm not trying to actually damage these things, but I want people to recognize this is possible. And if they don't stop me from doing it, it means other people can also.
Yeah, some other
they're going to be a little bit more sneaky about it.
Yeah, bad actor could come and actually steal all those millions, right?
Exactly. But so actually, I know this diverts a little bit from the validator. I do want to actually get back to the validator, because what I realized also from Marinade is these groups are larger. They're dealing with businesses that, I'm sorry, me as one guy or us as banditos, we did not have capital at the time. We weren't able to really contribute to the ways that these other groups were, where they needed liquidity that businesses were able to offer. So I didn't like working with Marinade just because of that reason. I couldn't have influence to the way I wanted. That's actually when we stumbled on SolBlaze. SolBlaze was a liquid staking provider. It was one guy. He had been working, I think, with Camino at the time briefly, but it was very small operation. They had very little SOL under stake, but they had the ability to allow us to have stake in or put our SOL into a squad's multi-sig and have it direct to our validator. Up to that point, every other provider, we would have to kind of self-stake, and you weren't able to have it in a multi-sig and delegate the SOL. That was the first opportunity that we were able to do that. And so we saw SolBlaze, they were looking to implement that more, and communities were a great way to kind of do that. And so I approached SolBlaze with other people, other banditos, to basically tell them, hey, we've got the validator, we've got this much SOL, we're trying to get it where we can get in a multi-sig and delegate it. Can you help us set that up? In return, I mean, we're using your protocol. We want to help you build that protocol as well, because by using your protocol, we are accruing governance tokens early on, and it's going to be at a much higher rate than as they grow and as more people join. So if we're able to get overweight governance in their system for cheap, that's a benefit to us. So we have the whole we had a aligned incentive to help SolBlaze grow and build. And that's then after Marinade, you started seeing me involved a lot more with SolBlaze.
Yeah.
I actually locked 1% of their tokens, I think it was, myself personally for 5 years. And actually it's still under the lock because I just refresh it consistently. But that was my show to the guy that, you know, we're here long term. We want to help support you. Likewise, we get benefit from your protocol. Let's work together on all this. And it was it's been a great relationship. And eventually SolBlaze even ended up joining the Banditos. And he's a member. He's in our Discord still. And so this is when I started realizing that the Banditos can use these protocols, not just to our advantage, but to help others, because if we have governance weight in SolBlaze, we have something of value. We have the ability to direct SOL to a validator. That gives someone direct revenue. So there's value there that we can have as a group that we can offer to others, even if our validator ended up going down. So I wanted to explore that more and figure out, okay, what can Banditos do to get more governance in protocols that we're able to then likewise have something of value we can offer to others. Unfortunately, with the space, there really has not been many protocols that outside of liquid staking that are going to be sticking around long term, that are actually giving governance where there's actual utility being offered as part of that governance, like gauges where you can direct a SOL. So there hasn't been too many opportunities to really expand on that, but that's also ultimately my entire goal is the more governance that we can get under these, get held by the Bandito DAO for true utilities that we can direct to others and offer to others, that just increases our utility in the space. That allows us to barter with other groups if need be. We can help other projects if they're growing, and likewise, like we helped SolBlaze grow, and we were able to benefit from that. If we're able to help other protocols grow, then having early weight in that will have the same benefit. And then you started seeing actually years later, the Vault, which was started by several guys, half of which were part of the Banditos. First thing they did was reach out to us asking if we wanted to get involved and help support them in their startup of the Vault Finance, another liquid staking provider. We said absolutely. We started putting liquidity into their liquidity pool, started gaining governance tokens, and now we've got governance weight in both SolBlaze and in the Vault, both of which we have directed to our Bandito validator. And so it gets to a point where we've had people leave the validator group and pull their 500 soul. I ended up even pulling my 500 soul. All of my stake right now was from my Soul Blaze weight, because I had 1% of the weight of the token locked. I had, I think at one point it was like 60 or 70,000 soul I was able to direct every APOC. I think it's down now. Oh no, I think 7 to 8,000, not 70. Now it's down to, I think, only like 3,000 or so, just because of dilution and other things, but it's still a decent chunk. But because we were able to get the protocols to more or less keep the validator going through delegated stake, we no longer needed that in-house. We no longer needed our people to necessarily keep their soul there unless they wanted to.
Mhm.
So that utility was directly benefiting us as well. We saw that value in utility. So why not kind of figure out how can we best leverage that and do that with other protocols moving forward?
Yeah, it's funny because you talk about protocols that nowadays are not as big as at the time, like Soul Blaze and Marinade, and I assume that also at the time there were not that many stake pools, right, to kind of work with and request delegation.
Exactly.
I was back then, and how it is now, if you want to compare.
Yeah, I think there was, and I think this was part of the issue with liquid staking now, is there started being other players coming in, because I think people started to realize most projects are going to fail because there may not be the need for the project's utility. When I joined Solana, one of the big bets I made, I actually had, I think, 20,000 Solana. I sold every bit of it. I think I bought it at $2. I sold every
Wow.
bit of it, and I bought SRM, Serum. I saw a centralized order book as revolutionary, as because that's really what EtherDelta was, but Solana actually can make it work. So I saw everything lining up, and I'm like, this is perfect. I went hard into it.
Ooh,
And
FTX.
then, and you then know, no, even before FTX.
Way
Then what
before, okay.
happened is liquidity pools started popping up, because this was before LPs were really even standardly used. Even the concept of LPs was just kind of starting out. And once liquidity pools came about, there was no longer a need for a centralized order book. The algorithms and protocols handling liquidity pools did all that work much easier and faster with more incentives. And all of a sudden, my Serum never really took off. While Solana went from $2 to 150, I think my Serum went from $1 to like $5.
Yeah.
I mean, I was able to get out before the complete collapse, but
Wow.
I
Wow.
did not. I lost. I didn't lose anything on that,
You just
but
didn't
I
make
did
so
not.
much. Yeah,
I would have been in much better position had I taken a different approach. But that, I would say, is throughout most of my career. I'll say I've been in the space since 2013. I have not made anywhere near the amount people would expect for being in the space that long, because I was never happy just sitting and holding something. Had I just sat, I mean, I had Ethereum, I was trading Ethereum at 25 cents. Had I just
Wow.
bought and held Bitcoin, I bought Bitcoin at $230. If I just bought and held those things and sat on it and did nothing else, I would be in a much better place. But I didn't. I was interested in the space, and I wanted to try everything out. I wanted to understand how things work, and I would move my stack around like crazy. And ultimately, have I made money? Yes, but nowhere near what I think people would expect. I still have student loan debt. I've not been able to pay off that student loan debt. Um, so, yeah, that's it, it's I think a blessing and a curse, because I don't think I would have understood or figured out a lot of these things had I not approached it the way I have. But I could have also been in a much better financial position. I wouldn't have as many friends. So
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
the trade-off.
Do you actually still believe in DAOs as the concept? Because actually, like you done, you prove that a lot of this I don't know, layer of complexity is not necessary sometimes, right? And most of the things that were called DAOs are just syndicates or something else, right? They are not autonomous, they are not decentralized, and yeah, they are not what they meant to be, right?
Well, and this is a thing I went back to, and I've made a number of posts about. Is I think the issue is everyone has a different idea of what a DAO is, especially back then. I think now people have recognized the nuances, but early on, especially around Monkey DAO, when people were spinning up DAOs left and right that were really just social communities. If you go back to the original article Vitalik wrote about DAOs, DAX, and whatnot, he's very clear about them being technical infrastructure and systems that are able to perform activities programmatically and only use incentives to get operations done that they can't do on their own.
Okay.
That is nothing like Monkey DAO. That is nothing like Bandito DAO. DAO was just the name so that people knew kind of what we knew how to categorize our group in the broader landscape at the time. But I would never consider ourselves a DAO. We're not. We're a social community that uses decentralized tools to collaborate and build a shared social identity. Now, and that's very different, but there wasn't a label or term for that. And so one of the big things I realized over time is, first off, if you have a true protocol, it doesn't care how many people are involved in the protocol or in the governance layer. It doesn't care if it's 10 whales with the lion's share of the tokens amongst themselves. It doesn't care if it's split between 10,000 people, each with equal weight. It doesn't care if it's a small group of or different groups of communities all working together. It's a protocol that just cares if it has a proposal or a change, can it get quorum or not? And so what I started thinking more about is I didn't like how most governance layers were handled mostly by whales, and most of those whales were businesses or individuals that got in very early, usually coming from Ethereum with a lot of money to throw at it, or being VC like SolBigBrain, where they had a advantage most people in the space don't have. That I wanted to figure out, how can we change governance and move away from a model where businesses are at that layer, because they're ultimately only ever going to care about themselves and their shareholders. They're a legal entity and they have very strict guidelines they have to follow. Rather, how can we get more groups of people that care more about the ecosystem and space together to handle these the governance layer? And this is where Bandito DAO was that kind of test bed, and how I see the space eventually going, if we ever get there, where governance layer shouldn't be by individuals. I see the governance layer in protocols like Solblaze, Marinade, Camino, any of these technical protocols, that it should be by communities. What these tools are, they are utilities that provide some type of value in the space. If we have not just Bandito DAO, but multiple other similar communities, all trying to leverage or use the utilities that these protocols provide for their own purposes, then you've got communities that are actually able to join together and work together to common goals. You are able to create aligned incentive models where, let's say, Banditos and Monkey DAO, and I would use at the time like DGen DAO because they were popular. If you can get these different groups together to align on, we could use this protocol to do X, and then that could benefit our communities this way. Why don't we work together and do that?
Yeah.
Now what you have is, instead of a group of whales, you have communities that likely have their own treasuries, have money that they can use and throw around, but they aren't necessarily tied to shareholders or external groups that they are having to appease. Rather, they're having to make their communities happy. But the communities are wanting to usually work with other communities and other groups together. So I started seeing if we can replace these governance layers from being individuals to being these communities and these groups. And let's say, instead of a protocol being owned by a bunch of different whales and a few smaller people, let's say you have 10 communities all working at that governance layer. then you have a system where instead of 1,000 people trying to coordinate and bitching, let's say, on a message board about why something's good or why something's bad, instead you have 10 different groups that all talk internally first and figure out what they see the value in and what they want to do. And then you have the different communities come to one another and work at that community level where, hey, Banditos are looking to do this. Let's say Monkey DAO, you meet with the Monkey DAO leadership or representatives that are supporting that protocol and say, hey, we have this opportunity. This is what we want to do. We think you would benefit from it by doing this as well. Are you on board? If so, let's vote together. If not, that's fine. We'll talk to other people and we'll see what we can do. If you can get people to basically work together and form alliances, then you're going to start seeing more collaboration in the space. You're going to start seeing these utilities actually being used for something that's beneficial for the community and are growing these communities. And I think you remove a lot of the issues that we currently see in governance, because what you then bring in is everything that I've been talking about with identity and reputation. Because if I, let's say, have some banditos that are representing us on a protocol's governance, and let's say they start acting as bad actors, that's going to tank the entire reputation of the Bandito DAO. That's not anything that most of the people in our group are going to want to have happen, and we're going to self-police. And so if someone's acting out of line with the values or the social norms we've established, then we're going to have a serious conversation with that person. And if they are not on board or they're not willing to change, then guess what? We're going to remove them. That's self-policing. And so what you do is, instead of now having where I can go in and fuck around and make whatever governance proposal I want, and you have 10 different communities all with their own internal ethics, morals, values, in that which they operate against, you no longer need to be policing individuals. So the governance, so the actual protocols don't have to do community management. The communities manage themselves. They have to focus on building their utility and making their utility the best potential for communities and groups to use, so they can get more communities in. So that's ultimately where I see the space going and where I see DAOs going. I think you're going to see a hard split where you're not going to see even protocols, technical protocols, even trying to build communities, because that's not the whole purpose of the DAO or that protocol. But for a DAO or protocol to operate and function, it needs human capital. So that's where I think the groups like Bandito DAO are going to come into place. Is you're going to need a place where people want to go to, where they get all of their more human needs met, where they feel they're supported, where they feel they have people they can count on when things are tough, that they can turn to. What do you see in this? Yep. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to ask, do you see those collaborations happening now?
No.
More or less than back in the day?
Well, the issue is I still don't think people get it. I still see Monkey DAO trying to do all of these ambitious things. And I mean, good on them for trying things out. I get it. I'm not here to say I know what I'm doing. And you know, but I really don't think they're going about it the right way. Just from what I've experienced. And I feel like they're just slamming their head against the wall and it's not working. And they just need to kind of move to the side and move away from the wall instead of slamming their head forward into it. But they're gonna test the space like they see. I think what we've seen over the past year or two is communities as a whole have kind of decreased because NFTs have kind of decreased. Those that are sticking around aren't doing as much. Their activity really isn't there. I don't think until we get into another bull market and people start piling back in, are you going to be able to start seeing more of these opportunities. But all I can do right now is I know what the Banditos can do. I know where we operate well. And so we can just keep doing what we're doing. When the space chooses to catch up with us, we'll be there waiting. If not, we'll just keep doing our thing.
There's something new happening on Solana, and you can hear it. Soul Radio is a 24/7 radio stream and original tracks only. No copies, no noise, just real vibes from the ecosystem. If you're part of the space, you need to hear this. Discover Soul Radio now at soulradio.fun.
Did you think that there's a lot of entitlement in terms of community? Let's say, like, people always think that someone else has to create something for them, right? Like there's always the leader that has to build something for them, and there's not this. People didn't understand what a community or a DAO is. That they actually contribute, they build together with someone or them alone. Do you think that?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I think this goes back to the same, like what I keep railing on is I think everyone's coming at this from a perspective of we need a model like a business. And when you look at a business, the governance model is a top-down structure.
Yeah,
authority is held at the top, leadership is accountable and responsible, but operations is always performed on the lower rungs. Well, most people voting are not performing any operations. So you've got leadership, they're trying to incentivize and motivate operations to achieve certain things. But like we said earlier, it's not that straightforward or simple to just get people to work together. What I realized and what I pushed very heavily in Monkey DAO a number of times is instead of having a top-down governance, instead you need a bottom-up governance. And the validator was actually, the Validator Council was a great example of a bottom-up governance. The Validator Council uses the Bandito name, uses the Bandito brand, but the broader DAO has zero decision-making authority over the Validator Council.
Okay.
It is almost completely separate. Anyone that's not part of the Validator Council could bitch and complain day in and day out all they want. It's never going to change what the Validator Council is able to do because the Validator Council handles everything on their own. They handled the setup, the management, the maintenance of any needed liquidity in for this self-stake, all internally. And then what happens is because we as a group came together through the Banditos, we have that shared identity. We want Banditos to grow as a whole. We took a share that we divided instead of shares up based on how many 500 soul shares each person had. We added an extra share for the DAO so that anytime a distribution happens, the DAO treasury, which was sitting in a squad's or is sitting in a squad's multi-sig, we would just direct every single month when the distributions would go out one share to the DAO. That then became a treasury that right now is sitting at about $15,000 that we don't have any real use for necessarily. But ultimately having capital has scarce resources and liquidity that we can offer elsewhere. And that's where you're seeing right now, we're actually trying to, we're going to be going live with Ride Markets, which is Realm's prediction market, where you're able to use your treasury. We're able to put our treasury into basically a fund there. And people are able to use our treasury to make leveraged calls on predictions on prices for tokens. Okay. What they have to do is they have to put up a bond of, let's say, $8, and then they're able to use the money that's in our treasury or in the treasury that's going to be held in that Realms or Ride account that will be used to then purchase the assets they're making calls on. If they are successful, and let's say they say that something's going to go up and it does, that call person is going to take 30% of the profits in addition to whatever they get as the outcome of the prediction market. But our treasury will collect the rest of the profits. If they make a call and it isn't successful, they're still using our money. And let's say they say Sol is going to go to $85 by tomorrow. And let's say they purchase it at that price, or because how it's currently set up, you purchase at whatever the price currently is. If it goes up, then the vote is a yes, it's successful. If it goes down in price by the end of the time frame, it's considered not successful, and the assets that were bought by the friend are sold back either at a profit or at a loss. But if it's sold at a loss, then the money that was put up as a bond and the money from the prediction market go back to the fund to offset the majority of any of those losses. So the person is basically using our treasury to make a leveraged call. If they're wrong, they then are funding the losses, unless there's a catastrophic issue that happens where, let's say, a token goes to zero instant within the day that call is live, the fund is very limited in downside exposure. But if they're successful, we would then be gaining profit from that call or that trade. So it created a model where, okay, we've got liquidity, we're just sitting on it. We can offer that out basically to others in exchange for a cut of the profits.
Yeah.
And so the goal now is, we've got liquidity, we've got scarce assets. How can we deploy that people then can use it, and we get a share of whatever profits they're making off of it? So then we're going to just grow that piece of the pie, that amount of liquidity that we have to do with whatever it is that we decide to. Eventually, maybe we'll throw some of that money at early governance and a protocol and try to step in and help build them up. There's a lot of opportunities that or things that we can do with it. It just comes down to a question of what makes sense, and what do we want to do.
So it's more or less like a market maker for prediction markets. I don't know.
Yeah,
something like that.
And it's funding the leveraged aspect of it.
And is this the Frogsworth? Is not this project?
No, Frogsworth's completely separate. That is my own. That is not tied to the Bandito at all. That is my own fun experiment.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. No, I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Of course. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Frogsworth is interesting. It was something I stumbled on just because I was looking through, because I just came back to the space literally a week ago. I've been out for about a year and a half or so because I've been focusing on other priorities. But I decided I wanted to kind of dip my toe back in, and I've enjoyed what I've seen. I've tried to do that a few times in the past. It just never stuck. But I'm starting to see things that are interesting me a bit more. And so it's keeping my attention. And one of the things was I was looking on Twitter, and I saw there was a post about protocols having taken in, let's say they've gotten like tens of millions of dollars in VC funding, and they've got like $20 in revenue or something like that, ridiculously low. And so they were asking who's actually making real revenue. And I saw the Frogsworth account post that they posted a snapshot of their analytics page showing how much SOL they've given out. And it was over 2,000 SOL. And I'm like, okay, what is this? I click on the website. It's very well made, where it's just, they've got a story, they've got an image, they've got a brand, and it's fun. They're fucking around with it. And so I'm liking what I'm seeing, but I assume it's just a ripoff of other old Ponzi's in the space. They're just trying to build hype, get people in, but there's no real new mechanism or anything.
It's like the whole and kind of that vibe. No.
Exactly. A lot of people like to recreate what others have done, thinking they'll do it better. But most of these projects are fundamentally wrong because they tend to focus on acquiring community and extracting value from their community as the main means of creating any type of value and distribution back to people. Where really you need to have you need to have money or value coming in externally, because you can't constantly drain your community. You've got to if you're going to be giving rewards out, it's got to be coming from somewhere else. It's actually, you're actually providing a utility that someone has value in or sees value in. So what Frogsworth did is I started reading, and they have a tax system in place that every 30 minutes, they have two different tokens. So it's a dual token model, where one becomes cheap to buy but expensive to sell, and the other becomes the opposite, expensive to buy and cheap to sell. And every 30 minutes, it randomly changes. And it uses a hash from the most recent Solana block that determines the randomness of whatever the outcome is going to be.
Okay.
So what I found interesting was that system creating a way to almost have demand generated for one token over the other through just shifting of costs every 30 minutes. They have custom LPs, and when I saw they used the token 2022 model that we talked about a lot back when it came out. It's what I Bonk ended up using when that came out, but it kind of died. No one really was really using it or leveraging it. So to see that being brought up again, I was like, okay, that's interesting. The whole core premise was a tax-based system on it, on the tokens and he was using that tax model to basically create different incentives with his liquidity pools by having two different liquidity pools and changing the cost of it, not by adding or removing SOL, but by making a tax on the buy or the sell and have that changing over time. Each time it changes, there's a potential for arbitrage between them if there was influence into that, if there was changes in the liquidity pools during the prior APOC. So I wanted to test that out. I ended up buying I started buying into the tokens and there was a tax on it. But what I noticed all of a sudden is I started buying from one liquidity pool and I bought up enough to the point that instead of buying from the liquidity pool that had a 2% tax on it, the routing started routing me through the pool with the 14% tax on it. I had bought down I had bought so much of the token from that initial liquidity pool that the rate now for me to buy was cheaper if I was going through the one with the tax system. So I stopped and I wanted to then see, okay, let's let the APOC go and see what happens. I let the APOC, it only took a few more minutes until it switched over and it flipped. And now I was buying, I think at the time it was the fraud token, and that was cheap to buy with the 2% fee. But it was the crime token was, I think, the 14% fee. It flipped where now it only costs 2% to buy the crime token, and it was 14% to buy the fraud token. Right as that happened, that switchover happened, an arbitrage bot came in, balanced out the pools, and the taxation happened from that arbitrage bots transaction where it then produced one Solana that got distributed back to all of the stakers of the profit token, which is you use the crime or the fraud token to purchase the profit token, which is their staking and governance token. So I saw firsthand there is the ability to have external systems making transactions on these custom liquidity pools, because you won't even see Frogsworth. You can't buy any of his tokens through Jupiter or through any of the other aggregators because his liquidity pools are all custom coded. No other system has done this yet, and he's the first, and no one else is. And he's been trying to get some of these groups to add his liquidity pools in, but he's getting a lot of pushback or hesitation because they don't like the risk of using custom liquidity pools. So I get that, especially from a group like Jupiter or that, where they don't want to take risks, especially in this environment where exploits are happening left and right. But ultimately, how do we advance the space and advance the technology? We've got to try these things out.
Yeah, of course.
And just saying that, oh, that's too much of a risk, we're not going to do it. Well, I get that from a business perspective, but from myself as Lieutenant Lollipop, I'm willing to take that risk. I want to see more of these examples and these experiments. So fuck it. I'm going to jump in. I see something unique. He's taking a 2-token, actually a 3-token tokenomic model that I've not seen before. He's added mechanisms to it that I've not seen before. Those mechanisms are causing external systems, arbitrage bots, to see value and make transactions on his liquidity pools that then take Solana from there and distribute it as rewards to his stakers. And I'm going, this has all of the pieces of something unique and new. Do I think it's ultimately going to be, that model itself is not going to be self-sustaining long term, but it's not meant to be either. This is meant to kind of bootstrap liquidity, and then ultimately all these liquidity pools, it's protocol owned liquidity, which means that the protocol is the one that ultimately has ownership of these LPs. The money that's sitting in there isn't money that's from a business that they can just withdraw at any point in time. It's locked in there. The only way to extract from it is to sell into it. And
Mhm.
because tokens are getting burnt, because people are joining the project, that liquidity is staying there. And every time money gets extracted, 5% of it, or every time a tax happens, 5% of that goes to a treasury. Again, that money is meant to be held as protocol-owned liquidity, money that can be used by the protocol however it wants to be used. That said, he does have very centralized control of the project right now because it is just starting, which I 100% support. Because as you see hacks happening every single day, the last thing you want to do as a new project is launch everything decentrally and then realize there's an error or an issue and be exploited and have all that money gone before you can do anything about it.
Yeah.
No, so I just so he's maintaining that control right now, and I think that's the right move. And so I'm seeing it in what he wants to move to is a futurarchy model where now the stakers and the holders of profit, as protocol owned liquidity grows over time through these liquidity pools, because the liquidity pools also take a 1% fee. So those LPs are growing over time. You've got taxes taking out of the money that's being transacted through them that's feeding back to a treasury and to us stakers. You've got a deflationary model where 24% of that is going to a buyback and burn, which happens randomly. So it's got all these different mechanisms that are just, they're the right pieces to the puzzle. As the protocol gains liquidity over time, that money can be, like Bandito's gaining liquidity, that money can be used for almost anything. Right now the model is to move to a futurarchy model, which I like what the model, he calls it the MILF model. I forget the acronym standing specifically, but it's in relation to a shared pool of resources that are able to be voted on how it's being leveraged or used, which comes down to the futurarchy model that they have. So there's options, and it doesn't need to have the decision today on how it's going to use that liquidity. It's got a unique primitive model. It's got a unique way that it's actually pulling money in. And it's got money sitting under its protocol that when they do decide to implement that model or something else, they can actually achieve it. So it's just got all the pieces of things I like to see. I see the bigger companies are not wanting to support that. So that's where the community comes in.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
us that needs to take that risk and go from there. And that's exactly what I'm doing.
So this model is very interesting, but I don't know, they restructured the hoard. I don't know if you know what is this mining token that was supposed to be the gold of Solana or something like that. I'm not sure if that excites you as much as this one or any other thing.
Wait, is it or?
Or yeah.
Or I've heard about it, and actually I just looked into it a day or two ago, to be honest.
Okay.
So it's my first time looking into it. I liked what I saw, but it was something that when I looked into it, I know it's been hyped. I know people have been involved in it now for a while. I don't tend to get involved with projects that have been already established. Even if they're great ideas and great models, I like to work with projects where I feel like I can have influence and I can help build. And
Okay.
when you get to the scale where you're working, like, I mean, with the Solana the Solana Foundation and other things, you've kind of already outscaled my ability to add value and influence. So I'm going to just look at other projects. And that's why something like Frogsworth is right now one guy who built it with AI. And he's going to grow. He's going to be expanding with the development team for his other, for the futurarchy model and things like that. But I would much rather help those type of groups because I think I can actually add value.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. You mentioned that you were away for a long time. Was that personal reasons? Was because you were diving into AI, or was just because nothing is interesting at the moment in crypto?
No, I mean, it was personal reasons. We all have struggles in our life.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
was having some struggles just in my relationship and family life that I realized I was using crypto and really the Lieutenant Lollipop identity brand as a means to really be myself, be authentic, and almost using that as an escape from some of the difficulties that I was facing in my personal life. I will say that I've since separated from my wife. I am now much happier with my situation. I feel like there has been a lot of improvements, but I feel like I needed that. I needed to stop using crypto or Lieutenant Lollipop as that out to just make myself comfortable and live through this situation, and really focus on, is this a situation that I'm going to be able to work on and resolve, or is it something that I need to move on from?
And it's hard sometimes to have the persona and your real life, and they are not aligned, right? And,
exactly.
It's
And it was a question of why
schizophrenia,
am I,
kind of.
yeah, and it's like, why is this so important to me to be this Lieutenant Lollipop persona? And what I realized is this is the only place I can really feel like I'm my authentic self. I've been, like I said, a pharmacist working at pharma. Professionalism has been, I hate professionalism because the whole purpose of it is to distill people down to just the operational aspects of themselves so that they can work well with others in a business setting. That's needed when we've had the legacy models where, you have to have employees that you only are limited to a certain number of employees within a region. You can't just let go people and hire new people. That's not how this space is. This space, if you don't like the people you're with, you find a new community by just clicking on a new Discord group. You don't have to settle for being liking everyone. And I don't want people to settle and just go along with me because they feel like they have to. I'm not going to go along with people just because I feel like I have to. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be honest. And if people like it, great. If not, that's fine. Click on another Discord. I'll do the same. So I think I needed to take that step back just so that I could focus on what I was doing. But after going through all that and realizing how I needed to handle those aspects of my personal life, I'm happy to be able to kind of jump back in and feel like I could be my authentic self, not just in this space, but in my real life as well, where I didn't
Stronger
feel
than
like
ever.
I could in the past. Yep.
Stronger than ever, right? You sometimes you have to find yourself to be authentic and to understand why some things happen, right? And why you have some reactions to some things, and sometimes you have to do that in introspection. I want to do 3 questions in one question. That is almost like, are we gonna have another NFT season? What crypto and NFT needs to get this season again, this hype again? And did AI took all the crowd that we used to have in crypto and NFTs, or would happen even without AI?
Okay. So the first 2 I think I'm going to break it into 2 pieces because I think the first 2 are tied together, and I have a different opinion on the third. So will we have a new NFT season? I don't think so. I think NFTs, the only reason there was an NFT season in the past is it is a very important technology that we did not know how to use, and the best use we had at the time was NFTs as we had used them. And that jump-started our ability to establish Web3 identities and not just our own identities, but shared ones behind collection. I think that was a model that was absolutely needed for us to get crypto and this Web3 space into the next layer that it needs to, in the next phase of its existence. But I don't think we need to go back to that. And as an example, my NFT or my PFP that I use on Twitter of Lieutenant Lollipop doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And the whole point of me burning my own PFP was to highlight that it doesn't matter if I have this NFT or not. What matters is when someone sees this picture, do they think Lieutenant Lollipop or do they think something else? If they're thinking Lieutenant Lollipop, then I have social consensus that this identity is me. That's all I need. But we couldn't get to that point until we had NFTs to basically have people take ownership of a identity that is different than themselves. So I feel like we needed that to get to this point, but I don't think we're going to need that moving forward. That said, I see a lot of value in NFTs, but not in the sense of them as JPEGs. I think
PFP,
NFTs are going to be absolutely critical, specifically for data and databases. Because if we're able to create NFTs with low enough friction where any database, and I'm specifically talking more about business databases and or commercial databases, where the amount of data in there is very high. I've worked a lot with highly regulated systems and databases where audit trails are important. You need to be able to track the life cycle of data, and the validity is critical. But the issue is all that data lives within an enclosed system. That the moment another company buys that other organization, it's not as simple as just importing the data over. You have to have these massive migration activities, especially if it's with highly regulated data. You have to ensure the integrity of it is maintained throughout the entire state. You have to have validation systems in place. You have to do so much legwork and testing and that to get this data moved over. It's crazy. No one would really realize exactly what it takes unless they're actually experiencing it. NFTs have all of that inherently. You create data not within the system. The system may create it, but it lives outside the system. You have audit logs and all of the metadata of what this data is inherently baked into that token, where it doesn't matter where it gets transferred to, what protocol imports it or exports it. You're going to be able to track it through. You don't need a person manually taking that data, entering it into another system, or creating a method of importing that data separately. So I see NFTs really becoming a key aspect of the Web3 ecosystem, but not as JPEGs, rather as individual data points. But look at databases and how many, and spreadsheets of databases and how many data points there are. If you actually turn every one of those things into an NFT at scale for a multinational organization, it's the cost is astronomical. The technical needs are astronomical. We're not there, but I think we will get there.
Okay. And about
So
AI?
that's an AI. AI actually, with what Solana announced yesterday with their AI platform, I think that's the first step we actually have to creating true DAOs, because we are now able to take a lot of actions and activities that we were using communities for, like Monkey DAO, to identify opportunities to contract, to bargain or negotiate, to make payments. All those things were having to be, we didn't have any way to do it other than people doing it. Now, with the AI models that are being implemented, that all can be handled through these AI systems. Is it going to work perfectly? No. But guess what? A social community handling it worked even worse than AI is probably going to. So it's not about being perfect or doing it right. It's about doing it better than the other options available.
Yeah.
And AI can do that. So I think AI is going to be absolutely critical in the development of Web3, because I think that's what's genuinely going to drive true technical DAOs. For then these communities to take that social layer and take control of the governance layer of these AI systems and that. So I see that as the future and where we're going. And that's actually one of the things that got me really interested and kind of caught my attention this time around, whereas when I've jumped in a few times before, because AI wasn't a part of it before.
Okay. So you think that we're going to work together, crypto and the AI is the future, hand in hand, not AI doing something and crypto doing another?
No, I think it's hand, because again, it doesn't matter how good AI is. AI has limitations within the digital space. There is always going to be some type of activities that it's either going to be too complex or it's going to be outside the realm of possibility of logic. So, I mean, all AI protocols, everything on chain is a logic-based system. Those logic-based systems run off code, and that code is all logic-based, where you can only operate within the confines of what that code allows you to do. We can simulate things like emotions and make it feel like it can respond to emotions, identify them, or handle them, but it's never going to be able to truly do it to the level that people are able to. There are abstract elements to society, to humans, that AI can replicate in a sense, but they'll never truly do it right. just because they cannot think abstractly. They can't operate outside the confines of logic. We can. People inherently operate outside the confines of logic. It's why almost every social structure we have fails, because people set logic-based structures in place, which is what governance is. It's a logic-based structure that fails because of people operating illogically or people operating outside the confines of that scope. So I think AI will always be there. I think they're going to handle the majority of DAOs, but I think there's always going to be a need for human capital in some way, shape, and form that needs to be available for DAOs to incentivize to do whatever work it is they need it to do. And that's where I think the social communities come in. I think the whole goal of groups like Bandito DAO is you foster the human element so that people want to be there. And then when these opportunities come up where DAOs need the support, they're able to contract out that and incentivize these groups to perform those activities.
Okay. So you are excited about the future, not this doom and gloom about AI and crypto, everything's going to die.
Yep. No, I don't think it's possible for it to die. The underlying technology is just too critical. It just allows us to do so much more than we were able to in the past. Not to say it doesn't have its downsides. I mean, but I think this is what we're learning right now. It's like I was making a post yesterday about, sure, you can earn 4 to 6% on your USDC sitting in a protocol. However, you have a risk of 100% of that being lost. And guess what? It's not FDIC insured. So unlike that money sitting in a bank account earning some interest, if that gets lost, you've got it insured. It's going to be taken care of. It's not the same with crypto. It's not fiat currency. You can't just pull things out of nowhere. You can't just take additional loans from a Fed. There is other complexities that, yes, we can try to recreate insurance, and groups are. You're always going to be pulling resources from somewhere. It's always going to operate a bit differently than how our current financial systems operate. So I think I think people are conflating two different issues. They're seeing the difficulties that we're having in the space, and they're saying the space is doomed. Well, yeah, it's doomed when you're looking at implementing systems like businesses, because that was doomed to begin with. I think stablecoins as a whole is stupid. I understand the need for it. I use them. Don't get me wrong. They're useful, but
doesn't make any sense.
We've
go against the whole purpose of crypto, right?
If you looked at a blockchain, there is nothing about stable coins. There's no USDC. US dollars is a legal tender. It's based again on the legal system. And it's something we had to bridge into our ecosystem. Yeah. We had to have companies create and back, and it's not native to the system. I can worry about USDC not being backed by US dollars. I'm not worried about a Solana not being backed by a Solana because it's inherently there.
Yeah,
it's these issues that when we bridge from the physical world or the legal world to the digital space that we run into all of these problems, and we say none of this is going to work. But when we're operating purely within the scope of the digital space, within the blockchains, we don't go outside of that scope. I think things work phenomenally. It's just people don't like that because they want to be able to do what they want to do, and they want to make the systems work that way. But guess what? They don't.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to learn to accept that and figure out what does work here, because you're never going to have a business function as operationally effectively in this space as you would in the real world, because you don't have the legal system to enforce it. So we can try to make that work, or we can figure out, let's leave businesses where they operate best in the
real
Web2
world.
space, in the real world. Let's create something different and not bring over those assumptions. Let's create new models. And this is where you're going down from, instead of a top-down governance, a bottom-up. Like with the Validator Council, we fund things for the Bandito DAO. If you have multiple groups all working under one group like the Bandito DAO, then you've got groups that have capital that can be deployed. You have groups that can work together. Those groups can determine the direction of the DAO and the group. There may be other members not part of those groups, but guess what? Their weight and their decision-making becomes almost nothing. So you then create a model where you're incentivizing people to actually do work in the group and collaborate with one another under the Bandito brand, because then you'll actually be able to influence the direction of it. If you want to come in and be an armchair lawyer or a consultant and tell people what to do and then log off, acting like you contributed something, you're just going to be left behind, because it ultimately comes down to, are you actually producing something or not? We've tried things like the Bandito Stables, and it's not being very successful. It's not because the underlying group or the photo finish is struggling. So
Exactly.
what happened is when it was doing well, it had similar influence like the Validator Council. Now it doesn't, because it's not contributing anything back to the broader group, but the Validator Council is. So it's just these different pieces that we just need to realize. We need to figure out what works well and what doesn't. Let's focus on what works well here and not spend our time trying to make things work that don't.
Perfect. I think this is a great final message from you. It was a pleasure. I don't know if you want to add anything, that any project that we didn't talk about that you are working or looking more closely.
The only thing I have been talking about, and I will speak highly about, is the AGNT.fun or agent.fun. Just agent is spelled AIGNT, which is just a trading bot, which I've always had an interest in trading bots, because I've traded and I've been successful at times and I've lost a lot at times. But it's because I am impulsive and I trade on emotion at times, and I'm just not good at sticking to a methodology.
The rules.
And
Follow the
my
rules.
issue, I've always liked bots because for that reason, or now agents, because you can set parameters and they'll stick to them. They don't get impulsive. Now, but the issue is I did not have the technical background to build anything myself, and I didn't trust myself to. But these guys, I've known one of them for years in the space, and their tool, I'm able to tell using Claude what I want the conditions to be on entry, on exit, and it will implement it. It then will monitor it. It will tell me how the performance is. It will give me recommendations based off of the other metrics and identifiers on what to do. So I'm really liking what they're offering. I'm liking how AI is being pulled into it to leverage it. So I'm excited about that.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
The only thing I wanted to plug.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Yeah, just completely mind blown by your visions, your ideas of governance, and all the other things. It's great. I think everyone's gonna love this episode. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Have a great day.
Bye bye.
Chop, chop, the wood we carry. Chop, chop, never meant to bury. Fire runs through the grain. Nothing lost, nothing to claim. Chop, chop, keep it moving. Chop, chop, always flowing around the night. Voices arise in the dark, truth survives.